Khuyen,
Hey.
how are you doing today?
Oh, sure. Let me turn off the music. Didn't know I have music on.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah. How are you?
I'm fine, Khuyen. It's great to have you around.
Yeah.
So, yeah, our people are going to fully join us shortly. I think some people will just join. You know, we use this, some people wait for this Google automated calendar to buzz them before they start joining the session. I see some people wait for the Google Calendar to buzz them before they start joining. Okay, so you can see they're coming in already. So in the next 1 minute, I believe we should start.
Okay, that's cool.
All right.
Before that, can you enable me to share screen? So.
Oh, I am so sorry, Khuyen. Khuyen, I'm so sorry. I thought I had done that already. Let me just. So sorry about that. You can share your screen now.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
All right. Khuyen, I think you should do a video on this this app you used to do this. I think that's Excalibur, yeah?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think you should do a series of videos on this.
On this one? You think so?
Yeah, a lot of us need to learn. A lot of us need to learn how to use this app.
Yeah, it's very cool. I like it. I use it for like a lot of my article because it looks nice.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. So we can go ahead. We can start now.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Hi everybody. I'm Khuyen, and I'm working as a data scientist at Ocelot Consulting. Today I want to teach about variable and function in Python. So what are variables? Variable is used to store values. What that means is you could assign a equal 3, assign value 3 to a, and let's see what we have when we call a, and we have 3. So we could assign the new value to a, and we will get back a new value. So that is cool. Let's see other things that we can do with variable. You could compare a variable to another value. And this one we got true because the value we assign to is 4. So now let's assign 5 to b, then see what happened if we compare A and B, and we got the same response. So one thing, so variable with integer is kind of straightforward, but something that we need to pay attention when we assign a list to a variable is, so let's just start with assign a list of 1, 2, 3 to the variable A. So we got this. So now we can assign B to A. What happened when we do this is A and B will point to the same object. Now we will pop. So what does pop mean is we take the last value of the list out. So let me run this. And we pop it out. Now, let's see how our B look like. B, it will be 1, 2, which is what we expected. But if we look at A, it is also 1, 2. It's because A and B point to the same object. So if we pop the value B out, the list change, and the list that A point to also change. So is there a way that we can modify the new list without changing the original list? We can do that with copy. So let's just start fresh with A equal 1, 2, 3. Now, instead of set B equal to A, we can set B equal to A copy. And now try to pop the last element of the array that B point to out. And let's look at B and look at A. So as we can see here, A doesn't change when B change. It's because we set a shallow copy of A. So the next thing we're gonna cover is variable names. Before talking about good variable names, we should talk about bad variable names. First of all, we should avoid using built-in variables. So what are built-in variables? Those are something that when you type, you can see that is highlight. And this is one of the built-in variables. What this does is it will create a new string object for the given object. For example, 1 is an integer, but if you pass 1 to the built-in method string, then it will become a string. But if we set string to another value, then now when we want to use string 1, it will give us an error. So avoid assign the built-in functions or variables to a particular value. Another thing is don't start a variable with a number. So this is not allowed. This is also not allowed. So that is not allowed, and any kind of character B equal 1 also not allowed. Yeah, don't use this in the shell. To don't start with this kind of character to assign to name a variable, but underscore is okay. So if you can do BV equal 1, that is okay. But you should save the variable that starts with the underscore for private variable. And we will not talk about private variable in this session, but that's something that you should keep in mind. And variables should be easy to understand. So for example, I think like the common practice for Python beginners is to assign an object, like to write a vague variable names. What it means is, for example, we have a dictionary of number of fruit in our basket, apple equal 3. Now we assign to A. This is not good because when people look at your code and they see A, they will not understand what A does. And another thing to avoid is to avoid shortcuts. So don't write something like fruit equal that. Just write the full name. So write fruit num fruit equal a dictionary, or so you can see like we separate two words by underscore. Another thing you can do to separate two words is to capitalize the next word. So We can also do that. Okay, so that is what we got for variable. And the next one is function. What is function? So let's start with an example. So we have 2 times, we want to know the value of 2 times 4 plus 3. And we also want to know about the value of 2 times 5 plus 3. This is repetitive, like every time. As you can see, the only value that we change is 4 and 5. However, because we don't put these into functions, so we need to rewrite the same expression again in order to get the new value. That is when function comes in handy. So function in Python is very similar to the function you learned in your math class. Let's try to create a function in Python. What does a function take? A function takes in some parameters and some expression. And once you give the function a value, when you give the value to the parameters of the function, then it will give you a certain output. So let's start with writing a function that take x as a parameters, and it return 2x plus 3. So now when we can use this function by call linear, the name of the function, and the value that we want to assign to x. So here we want to assign 2 to x. And as we can see, the output change when we change the value of x. And then another things, we can also call this function without setting x equal 3. We can just say linear 3 and we'll get the same value. So another thing that you can do with Python functions is to set default parameters. So what is so how can you set default parameters? So we can have an example to create a function to QuickUser, and by default we have user is equal to true, and if is user, then we'll print hello. Else we print please sign in. So now, so here, if you pay attention, when we call linear without giving it a parameter, it will give you a type error. However, here, since we set the default parameter for each user, we could run it without setting the value for the parameter. It is because we have each user equal to true, and when we call this, the default is e user, so we'll run this code. We could change the default parameters by overriding it with is user equal to false, and we will get a different output. Another thing to pay attention to about Python function is the return statement. So I think I already briefly introduced about it here. So a function should have return values. It might or might not have, but for this one, it have return values. And so if you don't return it, if you just do print, then what will happen is when you do linear 2, you will also get something, but this is only the print statement. If you set A equal to linear 2 and you call A, then you will get back nothing. However, if you change this to return to x plus 3 and you run this again, and you will have a certain value for A, because this one return a value and this value is assigned to A. Many times you don't know how to write a function yet, but you need the function for the next function. So you can use pass. So example, you can say QuickUser is user. If so here I don't know yet how I should write this function, but I know that this function is to QuickUser. So I just do pass, and then now I can use this function for another function. Say show the main screen, and we also have is user. And we can call the function we had before. So this pass statement is very useful when you don't know how to write a function yet. Another thing that is very useful in Python is Lambda. So you can think of Lambda is like a short way to write a Python function. So for example, we have a function multiply by 2. Okay, and we can try to use it. Multiply by 2. And we assign 3 to num, and we have back 6. The alternative way to write this is to use Lambda. Let's continue with using this function first. So we have nums equal 1, 2, 3, 4, and we can use we can apply this function to every element in the list. And we got 2, 4, 6, 8. So what this one does is multiply the number in the array, each element by 2. We can replace this one with a shorter expression. So we can do map. Now we use Lambda with the argument to be num, and we want to multiply num by 2, and we will apply this function to every element in the array. And we have the same thing back. So sometimes Lambda is very useful if your function is very short. So it helps you to reduce the number of lines you need to write. So that is Lambda. So we end the function session with why do we need to use function? We use function to avoid writing the same piece of code several times. So as I showed at the beginning, the first example, by writing the function linear, we avoid writing the same expression with only one value change over and over again. Another thing that is useful is to, when you write a big chunk of code, it makes your code look very complicated. And when people read your code, it's make it very hard for them to follow and understand what it does. So here's an example. So there are two things happen here. So if a person is user, then you say hello. And if that person is not user, then you print please sign up or sign in. Another piece in this chunk of code is whether that person is admin or not, and you respond accordingly. So here, this doesn't look very difficult to follow, but if you want to expand this code or you want to expand this code, it doesn't look nice and others cannot understand well, and it also make it very difficult for you to write the function. Instead, you can break it down into multiple functions. So I could write a function called choose what to do. And in this function, I take into the argument is user and is admin and QuickUser. So I will call a function called QuickUser, but I haven't write the function yet, but I have an idea that in choose what to do, I need to QuickUser and show them the main page. So QuickUser will take into the argument is user and show main page. We're taking the argument is admin. And now we can write a function QuickUser, and this one taken to the argument is user. And just copy it here, so make it quicker. Print and show the main page. So now we can, so as you can see, we organize this chunk of code. We break it down into multiple functions. Now when people look at your code, they know this piece of code, QuickUser, this piece of code will show them the main page, and the combination of these two functions means that your site try to figure out what to do when a person signing in your page. Now we can call the entire code by only calling choose what to do. So you can say is user equal true and is admin equal false. And so here you can see if is user, it brings hello. And since this person is also admin, this person is not an admin, the page show here's your daily read. But when the parameter change, the output also change. And this is very convenient since we don't need to rewrite this again and again. We only need to change the value of the argument for the output to change. So since we learn about, I want to talk global and local variables after talking about the function because it related to function. So what is global variable? So you can think of, let's start with an example. So we have a variable fruits equal apples. And we have a function get fruits. Today, I bought fruits. And when we run this code, so as you can see here, I didn't pass any value to this function. However, when I call get fruits, it still give me back apples. It is because I already create a global variable called fruits. So when I call this function, because there's no parameter here, so it will pick up something outside of the function scope, which is fruits, a global variable. So local variable is the opposite. You can, for local variable, it's only available inside the function. So here, this is called local variable. And if you run get fruits, and you do oranges, so you can see this value will override the global variable and return the value that you give to it. And so should we use local variable or global variable? I think that using local, I suggest using local variables when using functions, because it can be, if you have another function that use fruits, then it can be very confusing you should only, using global variable make it harder for them. So if you have like many pieces of code down here, and if they want to know what is the value of fruits, they need to go into your entire code to find the global variable fruits, which is not ideal. So I suggest that you should use local variable instead of global variable. And yeah, that's it for the lesson. And thank you for listening. I want to send you guys the link to the notebook so you can run it on your own machine.
Okay, thank you very much, Khuyen. Thank you very much. That was a very quick introduction to functions and variables. So, do we have any questions for Khuyen? Please unmute yourself. Feel free to unmute yourself and ask, and then we can take it up from there. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ted.
No, just no any questions from my
end. Okay. Okay, Ted. Okay, great. All right, Omoy.
No questions.
No questions. Okay, great.
I have one.
Oh, Aziz, go ahead. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. While defining the function, I noticed something that it seems very new to me now. So, when she's creating parameters, she used bool, like is user, and she'll put bool here in front. So I just started learning, and I see that it is very new to me. So if I don't put bool, and if I put bool, what can be the difference for that?
Yeah, so actually, if you don't put bool, it still works, right? The reason why I put bool is because it's for readability, it's for you and for others. So when people want to use your function, sometimes they don't know if what they should, like what is username, right? Is username, should you pass a string, to username, or should you pass a boolean? and a Boolean means true or false, right? So it can be very difficult for them to know how they're gonna, which kind of value, which type value they're gonna pass to your function without seeing it. So not putting the type into the function is fine, but it's a good practice to add the type of that variable to the end of the variable in the function definition, because it makes it easier for others to know how to use your variable and function.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm. Does it make sense to you?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Aziz. Ife, do you have any questions?
No, I don't.
No. Okay, I'm surprised nobody's asking Khuyen about why she prefers to use maybe Collab to VX Code or something. Nobody asked that question.
Oh, that's true. Thank you for that question.
Okay, so Khuyen, why do you like Collab? Why not VS Code and some other IDE?
Yeah, I normally don't use Collab, but like for the presentation, it's easier for me to send people a link. So I use Collab.
Okay, great, great. Okay, so Khuyen, a quick one. For the last two episodes, we have talked about functional programming. We've also talked about object-oriented programming. And if someone is to ask you, let's say you want to just build a guessing game, like, okay, I want to guess a number, and what is it? What would be your best approach to designing that small guessing game? Would you prefer to go full object-oriented or just functional, just create functions and just for them?
I think depends on how big is it. I think my journey has come from object-oriented programming to functional programming. So I do think that it depends on the code. I think like you should use class and function. You start with the functions, right? And if those functions have the same objective, then you put it in the same class. I think it's a good first approach. I think object-oriented programming will be a good approach for that.
Okay, okay.
Yeah.
Great, great. Okay, so thank you very much, Khuyen. Anybody wants to ask any other questions before we call it a day so that we can quickly just release Khuyen?
I don't have a question and any more questions. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, Tess, go ahead then, Aziz.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to ask a bigger picture question. Like, we know that this is the basic class about Python, right? But how actually do Python will help me if I want to become a future data scientist? So how well such basics would help me capture the bigger picture in the future?
So with everything you learn, it always starts with the basic and it's get harder, right? So this is only the basic, but once you learn more about Python, it will get harder. And I do think that Python is very useful for you as a data scientist because first of all, I think like many companies now require you to know Python. Some companies require you to know R. But I think if you want to work with a team of data engineer, you should know Python so that data engineers often understand they know Python than R. So if you know how to write Python, then it will make it easier for others to understand your code and for your code to be used by other team members.
Yeah, thanks. That answers my question. I just wanted to ask one more question that, like as you said, that some company prefer Python and some of them prefer R, right? But I mean, what I see majorly that the one with a statistical background prefers more R language than Python. And if you are a beginner, what would you choose, R or Python? Because I know that Python is easy to start, but if you want to deep dive into exact what data science is, I guess R is more beneficial or Python is more library resourceful. Which one counts better?
Are you asking about R versus Python? Which one should you learn?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
I think it depends on do you see like there's more R being used than Python?
So it's like when there is more statistical work, generally prefer R. People prefer R, and
Okay.
if I mean
Yeah.
there are
I
different positions, right? Yep. Go on.
no, I know some R, and I do think that like R is very easy to use for statistics, right? If that is, but I still think that like the future of data science is a data scientist should know how to analyze data and also put your code into production. And I think Python is much more like Python is designed for you to do both. I think it's hard, or you can still put code into production, but it's harder. So I think it depends on what you want to do with as a data scientist, right? Because the word data scientist is very vague. So if you want like a job that, you know, like research heavily and focus more on like data exploration and statistics, then maybe R will be a good start. But I think Python can do all of those things as well. So
Yeah,
yeah.
so I get your point that it mainly depends upon the needs and what is the exact want.
Yeah, I think like
Yep.
you should,
Thank you.
yeah, you should start looking at some companies and see their requirements. That will give you a good idea if that's the job that you want, and they give you see like, I don't know, 80% of them say R, right? Or 80% of them say Python for the job that you like, then it will give you a direction for which one you should start.
Yes, that answers my question. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you, Khuyen. Okay, so what I've done is that in the chat room, I have put the remaining topics that we have in this session. So next week, Ngozi and Ajuba will be taking us on control structures so that you can understand how things like selection, looping, and all those work. You know, then from the upper Saturday, we will go straight into libraries. That Storm will be taking us on NumPy, and then Yogita will be taking us on Pandas. Nisha will be taking us on Matplotlib and Seaborn. And then Dennis Rothman will be taking us on bringing everything together, how to, you know, marry this whole thing you have learned over 8 weeks into your data science journey. So I'm trying to also calm your minds, because some people have asked, okay, so you have been telling us the basics for 3 weeks now. So what's okay, what's the basic going to do for us? That's 4 weeks now. This is our fourth week of the basics. So like, I mean, why are we doing basics? And that's the thing. Like Tom will always say, the foundation is very important for anyone who wants to become a practitioner. All right. And these are all the things. When we go into these libraries, you would notice that these are all the things we're going to meet. You see all these basics that we're doing now? Those are all the things that we're going to meet. And when you go into the libraries properly and you don't like the libraries, like Khuyen, I'm sure Khuyen builds a lot of libraries. You know, if you follow her writings, you would see a lot of some of the libraries she uses. I have never seen them before, you know. So sometimes you might just decide, okay, you know what, I don't like what this library is giving me. Maybe the library is too pre-arranged for the kind of work you want to do. So I don't like what this library is giving me. I want to build my own. Like there's some certain things I have wanted to do. And when I saw the response NumPy was giving me, I'm like, no, let me just start from the scratch and just do my thing, you know. When you decide to do that, then you would now appreciate all these things that Khuyen has said, because then you will now have to define your own functions, you now have to define your own objects, you now have to define your own classes and everything, and then all of a sudden it will now become clear to you that, hey, I should have listened to Khuyen, or I should have listened to Guy, you know. So that's basically how it works. All right, that's just that's been my experience. Okay, so Khuyen, any final words before we call it a day?
No, I guess the final word is just write more functions when you write code.
Right.
Try to find, don't, you could start with a big chunk of code, that's fine. But your next step is to organize it into functions. That's how because at the beginning, it might be hard to see, okay, what kind of function should I write? But you could start with somewhere and then organize it later.
Right. Thank you very much, Khuyen. It's great having you around. I hope when we call you again, you'd come and share your experience with us. Please follow Khuyen on, I sent you her LinkedIn, and I also sent you her website, mathdatasimplified.com. Please log in, follow her on LinkedIn, subscribe to her page. Her page is loaded. That Math Data Simplified is loaded. I'm one of her secret consumers. I consume a lot of Khuyen content. I'm sure. Yeah. You would like it when you go there. You would like it when you go there. All right. So till we see next week or tomorrow, actually, if you have time and you can pop in for office hours or fine. Or if you don't have time, it's okay.